Thanks for coming out. I will not make a habit of coming to an end of the year press conference, but based on where we currently are in our evolution of TFC and the fact that this is my first year as CEO of MLSE, I thought it was pretty important to be transparent, try to answer as many questions as I possibly can from you. I believe in being as communicative as I can with the media. Obviously, having been in the media some, I don't know, 30, 35 years, I certainly understand it very well. And not only understand it very well, I appreciate it. And I appreciate it that that the stories, regardless whether they are positive, whether they're provocative, whether they're challenging, are stories that that we all appreciate. Because the fact is, you'd love to have this room even bigger, and you'd love to have more of you here. So we're grateful that you've come. We're grateful for the cameramen that have come and care about TFC. TFC for me is something that I didn't know a tremendous amount about, based on the fact that I've been in Europe for the last 10 years. However, being in Europe certainly grew my affinity for a sport that I always loved, which was soccer and soccer, or football as we call it in Europe. You know, I played at a very young age, and as I was telling somebody the other day, I played with a striker for about 6 or 7 years that was incredibly fast, had blonde hair, much whiter than mine, curly hair down to here, and he's now the Premier of Ontario, and that's Doug Ford, who was a fantastic striker. And so I loved the game, always did, but unfortunately I missed the heroics of 2017 and the glory years of TFC because I was in Europe at the time. I got very much involved in the sport when I was in Europe, and as some of you know, I have a very minor interest in Birmingham City Football Club in Birmingham, and I got to understand the game even better as being part of that, as we recently brokered a sale to Tom Wagner and Knighthead Capital out of New York City. So very love the game and passionate about the game, and in fact started to get involved with TFC probably 6 weeks prior to taking on the job of CEO of MLSE, and the reason being, it was right in the middle of the season. You know, the Leafs and Raptors had not started then, and so well, the Leafs were in the middle of but they were already in the midst of it, and it was just my curiosity and my trying to understand the different rules, trying to understand the TAM, understand the GAM, understanding the difference with the FIFA windows, and understanding all facets of TFC and MLS as compared to how it was run in the Championship and the Premier League, and that's a big learning curve. And we just went through it again with Marco Nappi, who came over here formerly from Bayern Munich, and he and I had a number of discussions about the difference between the Premier League and Championship and Division One and MLS. So I was fascinated and very quickly did a deep analysis and shared that with the board prior to even starting at MLSE. I had accepted the job, but it was the very first analysis that I had done. And during that time, we identified a number of my colleague and I, who was working at the time with Birmingham City. We did the analysis, and we had conversations with Bill and his team, and conversations with Jason to lead us to what some of our findings were. And so by the time that I came in April, I was up to speed with TFC and understood the business and the direction that we were headed. At this particular time, as I mentioned last week to Neil, in one of our conversations on a couple of other topics, that TFC now is in what's called a full rebuild, as we will, over the next couple of months, evaluate all facets of our operation and start the transition into what we believe is something that is absolutely critical to our fans, and that's providing a contender, somebody that can contend, somebody that can win, somebody that can get back to the glory years on an annual basis. And what that means is we're going to look at everything, and that's what we're doing right now. We're in the midst of it. We've started it. We started it prior to the season ending with Marco Nappi from Bayern Munich, who worked very closely with Jason Hernandez. We made some progress last year. John Herdman made some progress when he came in. Jason Hernandez is experiencing his first year as a general manager. He made some progress, but at the end of the day, we, I think, are 35, 75, and 31 over the last 4 years. We've not made the playoffs. Our show rates are down 75%. This should be a storied franchise like it was in 2017 and 2019. And as a result, it is time to rebuild it, and that's what we're in the midst of doing. And I felt that I should come up and tell you that that is what our plan is. I don't have all the answers at this particular time because we're in the midst of it, but it has started now. And as I said, the only positive factor about missing the playoffs, and it was devastated the way that we missed the playoffs and through the last 5 games, was the fact that we could start the rebuild already. And, you know, making the playoffs is not our goal. That is not our goal, and make it perfectly clear. Our goal is to be a contender on an annual basis, for us to be a preeminently operated team in not only MLS, but seen worldwide as a preeminent, efficient, well-run club in all aspects, on and off the field. And we're not there yet, but we'll be there. It won't happen overnight, but it will happen. And it is easier to make a turnaround with an MLS franchise than it is for some of the other sports, based on the difference of free agencies, transfer windows, and such. So that's all I can tell you right now is we're committed to getting back to where we should be, where our fans want us to be, where they deserve it to be. I'd love to see the supporters group triple in size. I'm grateful for their unwavering support this year, their support over the last 4 years. But they deserve better, and we're going to deliver that. And with that, I'll just open up to any questions. That's as candid and as honest and transparent as I can be.
Keith, Neil Davidson from the Canadian Press. It was interesting that you brought Marco Nappi from Bayern Munich to have a look at the club. Can you share any general observations that he gave you?
Yeah, Marco was Marco, for those that don't know, he was the former head of scouting. Then he became the technical director for Bayern Munich. He had enormous success with Bayern Munich. What we were really looking for, and maybe it came from my understanding of European football, but what I was really looking for when we brought Marco in was a completely different perspective, and to make us think differently. And he spent a couple of months looking at all aspects of our business, and I think his number one observation would be that the club lacks an identity of what kind of football we want to play, what kind of football is conducive to MLS, and as a result, that should dictate every strategy that you follow from your academy to your scouting department through and through. Let me be perfectly clear. He worked incredibly close and we were very transparent in everything that we provided him, and he made us think differently. And as I said, I was really encouraged by the way him and Jason Hernandez worked, and the way they thought, and the way that we needed to move forward. So I was in Munich a couple of weeks ago, and he took me through his presentation, which was about 3 hours, which could have been about 3 days, it was enlightening. And now Jason and I are discussing how we implement some of his concepts, not all of them, but some of them. He did spend some time when he was here with Don Garber as well. He has a number of job options right now, but we're trying to encourage him to come and help us this year with Jason as we rebuild this team.
Hi, Keith. John Molinaro. With regards to the club president position, maybe you could just talk about that. Where do things stand in terms of hiring a replacement for Bill? Is there a sort of a timeline? And what are you looking for in a new president in TFC?
Well, I think the entire organizational structure and the infrastructure that we're going to build is something that we're going to evaluate. You know, MLSE is different than other clubs based on the fact that we have a number of teams and centers of excellence. So the team president role here at MLSE is a different role than it is at any other club. You know, if you're a single operated club, then the team president gets involved in sponsorship, communication, marketing, and all aspects of the business. In MLSE, we have centers of excellence. So the teams who have traditionally been run a little bit more vertically are going to be more horizontally integrated in all aspects of the way that they operate the business. So that will determine in the next month or 2 months of what exactly we need. What is the best area for us to put the resources in? So that organizational structure is something that hasn't been determined, and how we will move forward. But we will have that answer in a couple months, and we'll reveal it at that time.
Joshua Cloak, The Athletic. Keith, given that you're in a full rebuild and given the player's salary and his performance, can you justify Lorenzo Insigne returning next season?
I think Lorenzo is somebody that is committed to Toronto. He's given his heart and soul to Toronto. But in a rebuild, you have to evaluate everything, and Lorenzo is something that we will talk to his agent, talk to Lorenzo in the coming couple weeks, understand what his desire is, and look at it from a holistic perspective and make a decision at that particular time.
Keith, from my understanding, it would not be cheap to get the Italians out of their contract before they end. Is MLSE willing to take that hit?
You know, I'm interested when people talk about the Italians. You know, they don't talk about the Canadians. They don't talk about the Americans. So I tend to talk about them individually. So I would talk about Lorenzo. I talk about Federico, and I would talk about Jonathan, I would talk about Richie, I would talk about Sean Johnson and Shane O'Neill. So I would encourage you not to talk about the Italians, talk about Federico and Lorenzo. And the end of the day, the ownership structure has been very supportive at this particular time of everything that I have requested. The ownership is committed to winning, and so I think the answer to your question is if we present a holistic plan with a deep strategy, then I believe the ownership will support that move.
Hi Keith, James Sharman here. What is your concern level regarding the Canada Soccer investigation regarding the drones at the Olympics and how it may or may not implicate John and his staff?
Well, I can't really comment on the CSA investigation because it is ongoing, we are in constant conversations with Kevin Blue from Canadian Soccer, and when they have something to tell us, they will, and we'll react accordingly.
Keith, John again, is there an identity to this team? Like, how would you define this identity?
Well, I think that's one of the challenges that we have. I think I would ask you the same question.
I don't know.
Right, and so if you don't know what it is, and you're a beat journalist, that I think is a bit of a problem. So if you don't know, John, then it's very difficult for our fans and consumers to understand it. So we will. We're going to take that time. We have a couple of months. The transfer window is not open for a couple of months. So by that time, I think we'll know exactly what our identity is going to be, and that will trigger every move that we make. And it will be something that it'll resonate through the entire organization. It's what we'll believe in, and it will be part of all of MLSE. We all know that. I do believe, as all of you have probably heard me say before, is you can't win without a unified vision, and you can't win without chemistry and culture. And I've seen a significant difference in the last 6 months with the Toronto Maple Leafs in terms of chemistry and culture. With Brad and Brendan and Craig Berube and the players, and the way that the John Tavares and Austin Matthews captaincy was communicated, and the way that they reacted. And if you've spent a lot of time with those players, the chemistry and culture is enormous, and that's often a difference maker. I'm still learning what it is here, but I don't think it is a winning chemistry and culture. I don't think the identity is something that at this particular time is clear to everybody that's involved in the organization and involved at MLSE. And if it's not clear to everybody at TFC, and if it's not clear to everybody in the organization, it's really, really difficult for it to be clear to the consumer.
Keith, I'm a little confused about the identity of the club. The team brought in a new coach, John Herdman, to deliver that identity this year, and there was talk of getting him the kind of players that he wanted to deliver on that. I understand the salary cap complicated things, but did the team not make a move to bring identity here?
Well, Neil, it's a really good question. And I can't comment on anything what's happened over the last 4 years. I can see what happened this year, but when I mean identity, is everybody completely aligned on what type of football they want to play? Do they want to play a position football? Do they want to play aggressive football? What kind of people do they want to attract? Do you want to attract young assets? Do you want to attract veterans? Are you close to competing, and as a result you might go after a different type of player? That's what I mean, and I don't think that at this particular time, and I can't comment on when John came in, because as I said, John has come in and we've made progress, and Jason has made progress, but Jason, it's an excellent question for Jason, and it's an excellent question for John, and they should both answer the question emphatically the same way without hesitation, and I'm just not sure they would do that at this point. And in fact, I think if you Neil, if you took that temperature and that question throughout the entire organization and the entire organization at MLSE, I think it would be very, very, you might get a difference of opinions, and you shouldn't. It should be all cohesive and united. You know exactly what we're all about. That's what I don't know if that helps the answer, Neil, but that's what I mean. And it's not, And it's important to understand it's not a criticism. And like I said, they've made some progress. But I hear it from fans. I hear it from our internal conversations, that this is probably as good a time as any to rebuild. But a rebuild in MLS can happen very quickly, and that's why we're feverishly working right now to determine it prior to the transfer window, as well as we have. And this is probably the best example. We have some funds available this year, but until we know exactly, where we want to go in all aspects of it, then we're going to put a pause on it at this particular time until we're ready, and that's full alignment from everyone. And I have a tremendous amount of respect and time, and he is very, very intelligent, understands MLS, and that's Jason Hernandez. What he is lacking, which he would admit, is some experience, but you can't beat his knowledge of MLS and his intelligence. And when you watched him and Marco work, you could see it. And I went, okay, here we go. We're going to create something. I've seen this before. We're going to create something that could be magical down the road.
Simon Haupt, Globe and Mail.
Hi, Simon.
Hi, Keith. Keith, I understand you say you can't speak about the CSA investigation and whether that might alter your view of John, depending on what that investigation finds. There were, however, allegations, reports during the summer, as you know, that TFC may have surveilled Forge FC in advance of their match using drones. What's your view of that?
I think at this particular time, we're waiting for the CSA investigation. Kevin and I have had numerous conversations over the last month or so. We have found, at this point, no evidence of anything regarding the Forge. We don't know exactly where that rumor came from, but we're going to, and obviously that based on it being a Canadian soccer issue, that is what Kevin and I said. So we're waiting for Kevin at this particular time to come back, and then we will, as I said, we will react accordingly.
So Keith, you worked with Marco, and Marco would have done, extensive background on the club. I guess the question that a lot of fans want to know is how? How did this team go from being a perpetual contender to very quickly missing the playoffs 4 years in a row? What have you learned about how that happened?
Well, obviously I wasn't here to observe it firsthand, so it's very difficult for me to understand the chemistry and the culture. And so I can only listen to people and what they have said about it, in terms of, and you guys can probably answer that question better than I can. We didn't dwell on what happened over the last 4 years. Marco didn't. What we did is we looked at the first team roster, what we have in terms of the academy, what is our youth program like, and how are we going to move forward. We looked at what assets are on our roster now. How do you use those assets in a positive way? But what happened the last 4 years, I'd say the same thing that I said when I came in and got involved in the Leafs. The last 10 years are really irrelevant to me. The only thing is where we are now and how we can move forward. So, people have said what happened the last 4 years, and I keep saying, well, that's in the past. Let's look forward, and how do we How do we bring back the glory years? You know, you know, Sebastian and I talked about it, you know, before we brought him in as an ambassador. And I said the same thing to him. I said, listen, I've never seen him play. I saw the highlights. And, you know, he had speed that was even quicker than Doug Ford. And I just said to him, listen, I just need you to come in and help us. I need you to come in and help us with the culture. You know, he's obviously involved in the Juventus Youth Football Academy, so he's got a keen eye on football, and he's going to help Jason as well. So when we talked about, it doesn't really matter what happened the last 4 years. It only matters what happens the next 4.
Keith, with regards to season ticket sales for 2025, can you tell us where things stand with that in terms of a renewal rate or anything like that?
I don't have that right off the top of my head. The renewals I think they are on track, but I would have to check at this point. You know, the other thing as I will scurry back downtown after this is for a World Cup meeting, and you know, that certainly plays into the factor why this has become such an urgent priority for us. You know, the World Cup is coming up in 2026. We've got 6 games here. That's like 6 Super Bowls. I don't think the city really understands how big and monumental this is going to be. You know, when you think about the engagement factor in Qatar was 5.3 billion, which is, you know, the world's population is only, you know, 8.5 or so. So the World Cup, and if you've had an opportunity to be there, and the economic impact that it can have on the city is incredible. And that economic impact on the city and you know, what it can do to football and endearing football to the youth who now actually see football on the world stage at the World Cup, regardless of whether you're at the event or you're one of the tailgate parties. There will be so many different viewing opportunities for people to touch the brand and for it to galvanize the communities. I think that we, at that particular time with TFC, have to be firing on all cylinders. So that is a real critical component to the urgency and the time that I will spend on TFC. Because by 2026, you want to have an exciting, entertaining team that is engaging the city, and all the people that then have experienced the euphoria of the World Cup, you know, now want to experience some of that at BMO Field. And some of the renovations that will occur during the World Cup will stay and be permanent afterwards, which will be a benefit for TFC. So World Cup is pretty critical to us, and we want to be ready and have this team ready for when World Cup comes here. Did you want another, Neil?
Keith, you've talked about talking to the league about getting more weekend afternoon games.
Yes.
And I believe you've also talked to local officials about trying to find ways to get people to the stadium easier.
Yeah.
Is there any progress on that?
Yeah, I think congestion is an issue. There is no question. We had a conversation yesterday with the Ontario government. As I said, I'm heading downtown after this to meet with the mayor. I think it is more than just congestion too, though. There has to be, you know, this year I witnessed, you know, BMO Field and Budweiser Stage ending concerts at the exact same time, and then the Gardner being closed at 11 o'clock. So you're trying to scurry out of the stadium to make sure that you can still get on the Gardner. So, you know, working with the city on I think it was a miss for me that I didn't see coming, because the show rates are an issue. You know, people are buying the tickets, but, you know, I think the number one complaint that we have right now is congestion. And that's a real issue. So how are we going to combat that? And to answer your other question, I've been pretty forthcoming in my comments regarding the need to play afternoon games on the weekend. And I think you'll find more afternoon games on our schedule next year.